So today, I thought maybe we would talk a little bit about one of my favorite topics, which is kind of the late period of the Iggy and the Stooges career. And I think this is a vastly overlooked area, and no one's really a kind of or I mean, people have, but I'm not sure anyone in the vinyl community has really kind of put the pieces of it together so that somebody who's just getting into the band would really kind of understand how to approach this late period of the Stooges. So we all know these the records like this one. This is not an original U.S. This is an original uh, French pressing, and from what I understand, they use the same. Um, it's the same as the U.S. original, except it has a label on it that says French U.S. I've had an original U.S. and I sold my copy, and it was like a VG, and you can still grab a mint copy of one of these for very reasonable. So, um, Funhouse, which is probably my favorite Stooges. This one gets a little more arty. That one's a little more rudimentary. This one gets a little more arty, and the band starts to take on more avant-garde influences, but still gritty and raw, like you'd want from the Stooges. This is great. This is an original U.S. and it's in really great shape. Glad to have it. Got this back when you could still grab these for pretty good money. Then finally, so after those two albums, the Stooges kind of disintegrate, and they're not successful commercially, and they don't really have any resources coming in, and the band starts to fall apart. The guys all go back to Detroit, and just by chance, Iggy goes to New York, and he runs into David Bowie. And David Bowie, who is kind of a fan, some people said he was a fan, and other people said he really kind of wanted to take a lot of ideas from Iggy and use them for his own career. And so either way, the two of them kind of strike up a friendship and a partnership, and Bowie kind of pumps some life into the dying beast that is the Stooges, which means that he kind of propped them up with money and financing and management. And they also, at that time, Iggy goes and he recruits James Williamson to be what at first was going to be a two guitar player band. And there is a version of the Stooges, which is really interesting, that toured where both Ron and James were both playing, guitar. And that only went on for, there's only about 8 or 9, from what I understand, only about 8 or 9 shows like that, and a few of them have emerged on tapes, and they're pretty rough. And unfortunately, by the time the band gets to recording their next album, which is Raw Power, um, James Williamson is playing all the leads, and Ron has been relegated to the role of bass player, which is kind of unfortunate, and yet a great band emerges. And Ron is a great bass player, and he enthusiastically embraces his job. And James was dynamite, and he was a good songwriting partner for Iggy. And so Raw Power comes out, and this album takes the direction of a more aggressive, more rock and roll orientated side of things, and it would have been interesting to hear what the band would have sounded like with both guitar players. But anyway, so Raw Power comes out, and unfortunately, it doesn't really do well. And it's kind of from a commercial standpoint. Now, a lot of people were very inspired by Raw Power. But unfortunately, it doesn't really pay off in a commercial manner for the band, and they start to once again disintegrate. A couple of notorious, there's a documented live show here in Detroit, and it's been documented on an album called Metallica KO. And I'll do a video on Metallica KO one day. We can talk about the importance of that. The band goes out, blaze of glory. They disintegrate again, and the guys all go home, and James and Iggy are kind of left to contemplate what to do next. Their gut instinct is to just keep going forward, just create a fourth Stooge album. And so they start to write for that, and they start writing songs and try to move forward. But there's no backing, there's no financing, and um, they really struggle to kind of like maintain and keep going. And the sessions that they did together eventually do come out, and there's an album that's well worth your time. It's not a Iggy and it's not a Stooge album, but it's Iggy and James, Kill City. Now there's no doubt about the fact that a lot of these songs that are on here, Kill City, Sell Your Love, Beyond the Law, Night Theme, some of these anyway, would have probably ended up on a fourth Stooge album. This doesn't really sound like the Stooges. I mean, it has Iggy and James, but it's a little bit more. There's some rock and roll piano and some saxophone, and it's really good. If you like the Stooges, you got to hear this, because like I say, some of these songs probably would have went on to be a fourth Stooge album, but it is a little different. You can hear that they're, in their way, I think they were trying to be commercial, and yet it's not a commercial record at all. And it did come out. I think this came out in '77 on Bomp Records. Look for there's a white label, which is the original. White label or green label? Now that I think about it, I think it was green. Was it? Yeah, it's green label. That was the original that came out. Bomp was good for doing colored vinyl back in the late '70s. They were one of the few labels that did that. So then, as a young man, when I was trying to collect the Stooges and trying to, I thought there were those three albums, and then eventually I found Kill City, but I still occasionally would hear, these other songs like I Gotta Write, or so many other songs. And I remember when one day I bought this album, which was The Best of Bomp, Volume 1. I just showed this a few days ago on another video for Garage Rock, unofficial Garage Rock tag. And on this record are two tracks that were not on any Iggy and the Stooges album. And I remember being kind of confused by it, like what are these songs? Where do they come from? And it just, and occasionally I would read or Iggy or somebody would mention in an interview, a track like Penetration or Tight Pants, or, and then occasionally you would see, so on Bomp Records comes out this single, this was a single for Iggy and James's Kill City in '77. I picked this up, and on the B-side is a track called Jesus Loves the Stooges, a previously unreleased jam by Iggy and the Stooges. So you start to think, where are these other songs coming from that aren't on any of the albums? What's going on? And I remember a couple of years ago on Record Store Day, they re-released a single that had come out. And on this, they kind of advertise it with Iggy on there, but it says on the back of it, the Stooges. And on here, there are the tracks I'm Sick of You, Pop Williamson track, Tight Pants, and Creature from the Hollywood Hills, all of which I had previously read about. And so you would see these tracks kind of trickling out of these Stooges tracks trickling out that weren't on the main three albums, and it was where are they coming from? Because these weren't just throwaway tracks; they were really good, and good, aggressive, and also taking a little bit of a different turn. They were darker and even more pointed and aggressive than Raw Power, and I would just, wonder as a young man, well, what's going on? Why are we getting these songs, and where are they coming from? Well, you do a little reading, and to recommend a couple of books, this is a really good read. Open Up and Bleed. This chronicles the entire, Iggy's entire career, but there's great insight about particularly the Stooges years, right up through the point of when the band finally did completely collapse. And then another one is one of my favorite rock and roll books. I think I might have showed this before. Please Kill Me. And this chronicles that period pretty well too, and you get a little bit of a more, it's kind of what these like oral presentations of the uncensored oral history of punk. But you get quite a bit on Iggy and the Stooges. And there's one other book called Detroit Rock City that does a really good job in telling the story of those years. But what you end up finding out eventually is that there was a whole host of tracks that after Raw Power got recorded, some tracks recorded during the Raw Power sessions, and then there was additional, when the band went to Europe, and there was additional sessions done then, and then even right towards the very end, they did some sessions even right here in Detroit, and I think in New York too, if I'm not mistaken. And so there were these sessions happening occasionally after Raw Power, where these songs that James and Iggy were writing together were recorded by the Stooges, by all of them together. And so it kind of became one of those things that you had to go out and find these like semi-legitimate, releases of, Bomp would occasionally do one, or there were some good bootlegs that would try to gather up these songs together. And when you started to look at it, there were really probably, 25, 26, 27, 30 stray tracks, and some of them more, some of them were pretty raw demos, and some of them were pretty well constructed songs that were really maybe in the demo stage, but really ready to come out. So the mystery is kind of like, what would a fourth Stooges album sound like? Are the songs there, and what tone would it have taken? Would it have been any good? Was the band just done, or was there a fourth album there? And over the years, I've bought CDs and albums that sometimes they give you a couple of those tracks, those missing tracks, and then some live stuff, and it was confusing to kind of like, really kind of try to bring it all together. There were a couple half-hearted attempts to see what a fourth Stooges album would sound like. But I remember it was during the pandemic when an album came out, and it was the first, I think, really good opportunity that a label took to try to compile the fourth Stooges album. And this is the album that came out in 2017. So, right before the pandemic. And this is called Heavy Liquid. And this is the version of the band, right at the very end. That's the guys, and they really tried to pull together all those stray tracks that I'd read about and that I had caught bits and pieces of here and there into a cohesive record. And it's interesting because the band was really at a low point when it came to this record. Drugs, drug addiction, no money, lack of success. They really were struggling. And if you read the interviews with all the guys, James and Iggy and Ron and his brother, you really kind of get the collective story that they were really down. And the one thing that they clung to, the reason that the Stooges did continue, was because they knew they were in a great band. And they felt it when they went on stage that, they over and over they would say, we knew we were great. And when we got on stage, all the lack of money and all those things faded away, and for 2 hours on the stage we could be that band that we knew we were. And but the songs took a dark tone, and so that's what's kind of compiled here on this Heavy Liquid. And you get songs like, and some folks who will be, hardcore Stooges fan will know some of these. And this puts a nice, it's got a I Gotta Write, Penetration, and then it just says like instrumental, which is just kind of something that probably would have been worked into a track. Scene of the Crime, which was on that single, Give Me Some Skin, Tight Pants, Sick of You, Rubber Legs, Open Up and Bleed, and then from the very final sessions that happened in New York and in Detroit. This is late 1973, and you get Cock in My Pocket, Head, Wild Love, and Until the End of the Night. And so I kind of wanted to talk about this just because I think it's a little bit of a period that's kind of not been documented very well, and certainly, suddenly the Stooges have become this like legendary band, and so many people are now collecting. They want that first album, the original, and they want the Stooges legacy. Believe me, when I was growing up in Detroit, it seemed like nobody was interested in the Stooges except me and a small group of friends who kind of burned the flame in our own way. And so it's pretty cool to see this come out. It's on Easy Action, which does a really good job in trying to chronicle some of the lesser known moments of Detroit rock music and the Stooges in particular. The one little missing piece that maybe I'll do a video and talk about is that really rare section when there were two lead guitar players in the band, and that makes me wonder, what could have been a Stooges album that had both Ron and James playing guitar on them, and that's something we'll never know. There are some live recordings, and we'll talk about those in the future in some other videos. But anyway, I kind of wanted to highlight that. It's always been an interesting area for me, and Heavy Liquid, which pulls together some of those, although not all of them. There are some other tracks besides what's on here, but this gathers probably the best of those songs. Now, the one criticism that I would have of Heavy Liquid is that while it gathers most of the really good songs on the album, it doesn't always use the best takes of each of those songs. So some of those stray singles and some of those stray albums still have superior sounding versions of some of those songs. It's pretty coherent and it's very listenable, and it's high quality, high enough quality that you can enjoy it, and you won't be. It's not audiophile stuff either. I mean, the Stooges are not supposed to be audiophile, but they're demos for the most part, and you can sense that from them. But you get a feel. I think this album gives you a feel for what that fourth album might have sounded like. And if you're curious in that period, that late period Stooges, that's a really good place to start. And then from there, you can start to hunt down, the maybe better versions if you're inclined to want to do that. Anyway, something I wanted to talk about and that I kind of enjoy, partly maybe because I'm from Detroit, and also because I've always thought the Stooges were not just a great band, but in their own way an important band. And really there ahead of the punk movement and but not just punk in the late 70s, but going on from there and even into the 90s, becoming very influential with a whole host of different bands. Anyway, hope everyone's well, and saying prayers for our fellow countrymen in California, and in just hoping everyone is safe, and I'm hoping that we can act collectively to do something to keep people protected And anyway, thanks for watching, and take it easy.